Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. So today, the plan is very simple and straightforward. It's even cut into three nice, even segments. Learn your words. What we're going to do is I want to go through the NFL schedule release, but I want to look at the NFC North. Not just going through their games, because that would be relatively boring. They play mostly the same games, and it's just in a certain order. Who cares? The bigger thing that I'm curious about is, like, what is the overall vibe? Are they excited? Are they scared? Is it front-loaded, back-loaded? Like, what is their concern? What is their strain? What is their good points and bad points about their schedule? And then also a little bit curious their feeling on playing the Packers, specifically the Vikings Week 1. I found kind of interesting poking around in that. Also, unless I'm missing something, which I probably am, I like things like Kalshi, but one of the things that's weird, Kalshi Poly Market, is it's basically useless until you get enough money in there. Because early on, any old guy can go in there, set it up, put $100 down, and the numbers are all jacked up. The reason why that's important is I was like, well, I wonder what Kalshi said. There was like $400 total on Packers Vikings, and it was 50-50. Now, granted, the Vegas odds are not too heavy in our favor, but I still looked at that and thought, okay, this is probably my best opportunity to get 50-50 odds on the Packers. I'm going to go ahead and do it. I found one other one. I forget which one it was. But the team had like 2.5-point favorite odds. And on Kalshi, it was the inverse. And there's so little money that the odds went from like 40% to 60% after I placed a very small bet. So just saying, it's worth poking around on there if something is very far out in the future. Because although it's super high risk to do it early, you're not going to find anything like that anywhere else. From my perspective, you might as well take advantage of it, which I did. All right. First things first, anything interesting going on in the news here? Colin Johnson retired after 5 seasons. Keenan Allen, don't care. Dalton Kincaid, don't really care. The Lions did sign linebacker Jack Campbell to a 4-year extension through 2030. He is a very good player. That was a very good hit. Campbell, 25, was set to hit free agency in 2027 after the Lions declined to exercise his 5th-year option, which is an odd. Oh, it's actually not odd because I think the linebacker gets lumped in with pass rushers, which is stupid, but the number is absurd, so I guess that makes sense. Instead, the team's leader in tackles will stick around. Campbell's 110 tackles, blah, blah, blah. I don't know the exact number. It's going to be a very big number. I could play the game of like, haha, now you have to spend all that money. And there is some truth to it. This is, as I said, this is the point when you become a big boy football team. And you can't just go out in free agency and do all the fun stuff. The Lions have been kind of over that hump now for a little bit. I think they've got several pretty big boy contracts. Penei Sewell is a big boy contract. Amon-Ra is a big boy contract. Jared Goff is a pretty big contract. So they've been immersed in this already. I don't think it's going particularly well. They haven't really been on top since, but, injuries. We'll see how it goes. The Bears are not even to that point yet. They don't have anybody worth paying at this point. So, anywho, Jack Campbell becomes another one. It's a linebacker, so it's not going to be, quarterback, pass rusher type money, but still. Eagles defensive coordinator Vic Fangio said Cooper DeJean will play safety in base formation and cover the slot in nickel. That's interesting. I don't know how much he did that in the past already. Maybe that was already kind of a thing, but that's pretty big news, and I would be very nervous moving him considering how good he is. I wouldn't want to change anything, but all right. I think that's it for the news. We'll move on here. So again, I want to start, I like to save the best for last. It's pretty straightforward in my mind. So we'll do Vikings, then Lions, then Bears. I was a little iffy on should have been Bears and then Lions, simply because the Lions are expected to be, I think, the top of the division, but we'll just go based off of last year. Vikings were kind of a pathetic team, leaving aside the record. Lions, and then, well, whatever. It makes sense in my brain. If it doesn't, too bad. So, first and foremost, with the Minnesota Vikings, I found it interesting because I'm not immersed in their situation, how they feel about things, etc. And I've always kind of got the vibe of Vikings fans as being relatively pessimistic. I mean, I guess I would say realistic, whereas when things are bad, they're pessimistic. When things are good, they're optimistic. I think they're a little more optimistic than I was expecting, and it's just at a glance here, there seems to be some, I mean, it's not even, as I went through, I started getting ticked off a little bit, and we'll get there, but they are, and when I say they, I don't know how everybody feels, but I'm surprised to see how much optimism there is in regard to the quarterback situation and how quickly they go from, well, quarterback was the problem. We got the quarterback fixed. Now we're going to be awesome. Like, oh, really? Really now? I mean, listen, maybe it happened with Darnold. You know, you were supposed to suck because, Darnold sucks. And then you ended up being whatever. And then Darnold left, and it's like, okay, well, they're probably going to be really good because they're going to make McCarthy elite or something. I don't know what's going to happen, but they're going to be good. And then they sucked, and now they're supposed to be bad, so they're probably going to be good. I don't know. But the first thing that struck me is the overall vibe is similar to what we have. I mean, very similar. So let me just read this little snippet here. The only real difference being the international game, but the 2026 schedule gives the Vikings a legitimate shot to get off to a fast start, features a brutal middle stretch, an exciting but logistically wild international game, and a home-heavy finish that could fuel a playoff push. So early, quote-unquote, easy stretch. The middle is tough, and then there's a bunch of home games to finish that could help launch them into the playoffs. That's our thing. That's what we're saying. The thing that I find, and maybe this is true of the Packers as well, but I find to be a bit arrogant, is looking at weeks 1 through 5 and saying these are very winnable games, and you see that it's the Packers, the Bears, who won the division, the Bucks, who are a pretty good team, and then the Dolphins and Saints. I mean, I in my mind, that's a 2-3 start. They see that as 4-1, maybe 3-2. Toughest stretch, weeks 8 through 11, and then week 14, there's a cluster at Lions versus Bills Monday Night Football, at Packers, at 49ers in Mexico Sunday Night Football, then a short week at Patriots Thursday Night Football, 4 primetime-ish games in a tight window with travel. But then the home stretch, weeks 12 through 16 and 18, are loaded with home games. Falcons, Panthers, Lions Sunday Night Football, Commanders, Bears, perfect for momentum and playoff positioning. So, I mean, look, I guess I can't expect a fan base to sit here and go, well, it's a loss, that's a loss, that's a loss, we suck, we're going to suck. But there's a lot more optimism than I thought, and I'm more angry about it than I thought I would be. Just you arrogant jagoffs. But it does start with week 1, and immediately my thought when I saw, oh yeah, this is winnable, is what exactly do you guys think about week 1? We might as well start off with this. This is Aaron Jones being handed the schedule and getting his reaction to week 1.
But have you seen who we have week 1?
Hey, let me tell you guys, I told you guys I was right. I called the Packers yesterday.
Did you?
Who we're opening up with. Yes, on the social media channel.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I said it was either going to be the Packers or the Bears.
You did.
And we
you
got them
both,
back-to-back weeks. So, and I love playing in Chicago early. You know, get the cold weather games out of the way.
Very true. How do you feel as a player about opening up with 2 division games?
The division is where it's won. So it starts in the division, and it's going to end in the division. Sorry. So to me, that's the best way to start it. You know, we mean business. You know.
That's a pretty straightforward standard answer from especially Aaron Jones, but any player. You know, I'm ready for it. You find the positive in anything. You know, I mean, it's positive because we get Green Bay in Minnesota. But then when one's away, it's positive because it's a cold weather game that we get out of the way when it's not cold. So no matter what, we can put a positive spin on it. So you don't think much of it. It's Aaron Jones. He's whatever. But let's continue. Here's the Paul Farrington show. And look, the way I'm viewing this is, if you're a Vikings fan, it's sort of, dang it, You don't want to start the season with the Packers. That team's pretty scary, even without Micah Parsons. That's you could do easier. Let's see.
Because we have a treat.
It's a treat.
We have a real treat.
Is it Dolphins
Week
Raiders?
Yeah,
Dolphins Raiders.
That's worth getting excited over. Week 1, Vikings Packers. Great way to start off the season 1-0 for Kyler Murray and the boys. I'm very excited for that game. You have to think. That's a Minnesota win, right?
You know, playing at home, I would say so. Yes, playing at home, I would say it is a Minnesota win. It is great that that's a week 1, like for leading up into the season with our channel, especially.
It's going to be awesome.
Like the lead up to that is fantastic. However, when is the second game?
I think the second game they have is like week 10. Yeah, week 10 in Green Bay.
Because I was going to say, like, I'd rather see a Packers-Vikings, like, both games, like, post-week 12. Like, if you have something to play for and it's late. But I guess week 1 is solid,
Week 1,
too.
here's what I'll say about the Vikings. And we're going to get into all these schedules. You know what? We'll save it for a little bit.
It's a tone setter.
During the rest of week 1, we got Bears-Panthers, the Jack Bowl.
So we'll just cut it there. Am I alone in this? The feeling of complete disrespect here. The fact that it's just immediate. Oh, so that's a win, right? That's a win. What the hell are you talking about? And to make it even more disrespectful, it's not even like, well, look, we feel pretty confident with the new quarterback, and you guys ended on a low note, so we don't really respect you, and you don't have Micah. So you put all that together at home, week 1, we're going to give ourselves an edge. Dude just pops up and is like, actually, I'd prefer if both games were like post week 12 because then you have something to fight for. So it's not even a Micah issue. You just straight up disrespect the Packers to the point where you just think you're a better team, period. End of story. I guess maybe it's a me thing. I guess I'm a little shocked here. Feeling a touch disrespected. So I guess I'm just genuinely surprised that, and I don't know if it's more optimism about the Vikings or pessimism toward the Packers. Probably a mix of both, if I had to guess. Let's put it this way. I can't imagine they view the Packers as a team with a top 5 quarterback with an extremely talented wide receiver / tight end core and with a, let's say, promising defense. Perhaps better than theirs. I don't think they see it that way, would be my guess. Let's continue. All right. Article from the Viking Age. Vikings may benefit from disastrous Packers timing in week 1. The Minnesota Vikings schedule was revealed on Thursday, blah, 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 blah. Goes on to say ESPN's Adam Schefter reported on Thursday that Parsons is a candidate to be placed on the PUP list to start the season. Goes on into that a little bit. Says if Parsons misses week 1, it leaves Green Bay without one of their more impactful defensive players and gives the Vikings a big advantage as they host the Packers. That's clearly true. There's no doubting that. Obviously, Micah Parsons is a big part of our team. It also throws in this nugget, which I'm guessing is baked into a lot of their minds. Green Bay also, they lost each of their final 5 games after Parsons' injury, including a Week 18 loss to the Vikings when they were resting their starters in the wildcard playoff loss to the Chicago Bears. Green Bay also lost some of its pass rushing depth that would have covered for Parsons over the offseason, trading Rashawn Gary to Dallas Cowboys and losing Kingsley Enagbare to the Jets. So again, the feeling here is it's like they lost Parsons and they were bad, and then they lost more of their pass rush. So, I mean, they kind of suck, you know what I mean? It just feels, listen, I understand, like, your main focus is your own team, not really going in depth on other teams, but it just feels so dismissive. And to be fair, we do that to the Vikings. Yeah, week 1, okay, so that's, beat them, and then we go, and, watch out for Tampa, but otherwise, we should win all these other games. But it's weird for them to be just so dismissive, including on that video we just listened to, where within the first 5 seconds, it's, well, that should be a win, right? This is another one that's kind of from the other angle, like I said, as far as the quarterback hype. Vikings Wire. Vikings Week 1 matchup considered one of the better matchups. Okay. This has a couple different angles here. It says the Vikings kick off the 2026 campaign with a tough divisional matchup with the Green Bay Packers. It's a matchup that not many are thinking highly of, for better or for worse. As a result, it could lead to the Packers sleepwalking into it. So now the Packers are going to be sleepwalking. So they don't have Parsons, and they're bad, and they don't have pass rush, and the Vikings are a better team, but also the Packers are going to sleepwalk into it because they don't really care about the Vikings. Even though it's the first week of the season, they're still going to be like, maybe week 2 we'll care. Then it references an article by somebody named Carter Bonds over at CBS. Quarterback play was the most glaring factor that stood between the Minnesota Vikings and the NFC North title last year, and they might have solved that problem with the signing of Kyler Murray. I feel like we're just glossing over a bunch of stuff here. So the only reason they didn't win the entire division is because of the quarterback situation. That's just a given if they had a good quarterback. We know that. The only thing standing in their way, not the rest of the teams in the division, that didn't stand in their way. The fact that they didn't have a good quarterback is the only thing that stood in their way. And now apparently they have a good quarterback, and so now they win the division. This is what we're going to do. He goes on to say, they only finished a half a game back of the Green Bay Packers in 2025, so the separation between these two teams is minimal, even if Matt LaFleur's side is the more ballyhooed unit. Murray out-dueling Jordan Love, who just saw his top receiver depart in free agency, would send a message to the division that the Vikings are real contenders. That would be tougher to accomplish if Micah Parsons recovers from his torn ACL in time to suit up for the Packers in the opener. So, to add on to that, they were basically as good last year, even though they didn't have a quarterback, and now they have a quarterback. And now we're going to go so far as to say, by the way, if Murray could just be a better quarterback than Jordan, then everybody would see that this is for real. So he just needs to go out there and just show that he's better. And then once he does that, then everyone will know the Vikings are for real. What is happening in Minnesota right now? You guys know Kyler Murray sucks butt, right? You understand there's a reason he's not a starting quarterback of the team that drafted him, correct? You get that? Is this something you don't know? Also, you've talked, everybody seems to be well aware of the collapse of the Green Bay Packers. So the idea that, we were only a half a game back, the Packers they imploded and lost 5 straight games, having essentially given up, and you still finished behind the Packers? And you're going to sit here with the freaking audacity to be like, we basically were the same team. No, not the same universe, bro. This is insane to me. And I'm realizing we're going to have to dig a little deeper into this to kind of compare and show that, no, they were not the same team, and the Packers were definitely a better team. I didn't think I'd have to do that, but apparently we're going to have to do that. That's not going to be today. So anywho, in summary, apparently the Packers are light work. They have a pretty light schedule in which they should have 3 to 4 wins to start the season. They have a bit of a gauntlet, including an international game this year, and then a very beneficial home stretch. And that leaves us with the end of the season predictions. They're obviously all over the place, but there's a lot more positive than negative. Now, I will say this. There's a big discrepancy between the NFL media at large and the Vikings fans, but Vikings fans are kind of what I'm curious about. So, for example, Henry McKenna over at Fox Sports, they are 9-8. CBS Sports has them 9-8, 3rd or 4th in the division. ESPN's Mike Clay has them at 8-9 or 9-8. ESPN has them at 8-9. CBS and YouTube NFC North panels put the Vikings at 6-11 and 7-10. Betting markets are putting them at 8.5 wins-ish. But what about Vikings fans? Well, Chris Gates over at the Daily Norseman says they're going to be 11-6. In his article explaining it, he even, again, decides to throw a little jab at the Packers in the most offensive way ever. I mean, it's so, like, It's not like the Bears are over the top when they do it. They say stupid stuff. Jordan is mid, whatever. But it appears the Vikings caught a bit of a break with their opener as well. The first time the Vikings faced the Packers last year, Micah Parsons absolutely wrecked them, blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is they caught a break. Again, I understand the Micah Parsons thing, but what do you mean you caught a break? He says our friends over at FanDuel still have the Vikings sitting at 8.5 wins. He just can't seem to figure out why hasn't that number moved? It should be so much higher. He says, and man, I'm not afraid to tell you, biased though I might be, I have no reason to tell anybody to take the under on this one. I think the team is going to be significantly better than the really smart football people are going to predict in a lot of the preseason magazines and on websites around the internet. If the offense is even mildly functional, regardless of who winds up starting at quarterback, this is an 11-win football team with Brian Flores running the defense. That's such a stupid thing to say. I'm sorry, it just is. You think Brian Flores adds that much to your team? I mean, that's the kind of thing you say if you have, like, the best quarterback in football. If we have even a mildly decent defense, then whatever. You're saying, I don't care if we have a quarterback. I don't care if we have an offense, really. It just needs to be mildly, decent in an offensive era. We don't even need to have good football players on defense. We just need Brian Flores. Come on. What are we doing here? This is the obsession now, is the Brian Flores obsession. What a stupid obsession. You didn't even have the best defense in football. It's not even like, I don't even think the Texans are playing this stupid game. They had a better defense than you. Seattle had a better defense than you did. I also think it needs to be asked whether or not we should expect some level of regression. Because on one hand, it's incredibly impressive. On the other hand, it's incredibly impressive. Maybe a little too impressive, considering the lack of talent on your defense. Maybe we should consider that. But anyways, yeah, so Brian Flores is the reason why you're going to have 11 wins. Let's see. Over at Purple Daily, one of their hosts said 9-8. However, that's with a caveat. That's if J.J. McCarthy starts. They will be up to 13-4 with Kyler Murray. 13 wins. Vikings First and Skol podcast had them in the 10-11 win range. Even Alec Lewis of The Athletic has the Vikings at 10-7, which apparently is a humble take among Vikings fans. And, by the way, second in the NFC North behind the Bears. So apparently it's going to be Bears, then Vikings, then either Lions or Packers at the bottom of the division. Okay, sure. I mean, anything's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. I would say that it's not the most likely. Again, go take a peek at Vegas real quick and see what they think. Because, again, it's a lot more hard to be biased or stupid when you're putting money on the line. There tends to be a lot less of that. Anywho, let's take a break. We'll come back and see how Bears and Lions fans are doing with their schedule releases. We'll be right back. The Lions come into this with one of the easiest strength of schedules in the NFL, top 3 or number 1 in multiple analytics models like Sharp and PFSN. They have multiple high-profile spots, Thursday Night Football, multiple Sunday night, Monday night, potential games at least. They also have an international game, Week 10. They will be, quote-unquote, home against the Patriots in Munich, Germany. The first one since 2015. Amon-Ra St. Brown's heritage, being partially German. I think he speaks German. Week 12, they are playing a Thanksgiving Day game against the Chicago Bears. So big game, rivalry game. Their bye is set up for Week 6. Most fans are pretty unhappy about that being a very early bye week. I think especially being a team that struggled with injuries. You're especially concerned about being healthy, and a Week 6 bye is probably not your favorite. The Lions also have a very different situation than the Packers and Vikings in that they have a brutal finish to the season with 3 straight road division games in the final stretch. At Minnesota on Sunday Night Football, at Chicago, and at Green Bay. Plus, they have a nasty 11 to 12-day stretch around Munich plus Thanksgiving. I think a lot of people are struggling in and around that time with weird weird timings and whatnot. So the overall vibe is there's a solid home road slate early to mid-season. Then you get a very road-heavy division finish, which could end up deciding everything. Overall, the vibe seems to be relatively positive. There's an expectation with the easy, in other words, we got a very easy strength of schedule situation not because we were bad, but because we were injured. And so now we're a good team that has an easy schedule. So big bounce back is coming, and pretty much just a blip in the road the last couple of years. The funny thing about it is that on one hand, you have Lions fans saying they believe they're going to win the division. They're the best team in the division, which makes sense because Vegas kind of backs them up on that. So they're kind of just in line with those claims. The interesting thing, though, in regard to the Packers specifically, is they give more respect to the Packers, generally speaking. Here's a video, Pride of Detroit.
But for me personally, when I'm looking at the game that I'm most anticipating, the game that I'm most excited to see kind of play out, it's probably a little vanilla, but I'm actually most excited to see the Lions square off against the Packers in Week 7 of the 2026 season. As we know, the Lions got swept by the Packers last year, losing both matchups in Week 1 and again in Week 13 to the Packers. And it's been a while since the Lions just haven't looked as good against Green Bay. Again, division games are always tough, so no matter how many times you play them year to year, there's always the opportunity to kind of fall short. But last year was a little bit of an anomaly in the sense of like the Lions just didn't look good in either of these matchups. You go to that first matchup where the Lions lost to the Packers in Week 1, 27-13. And from jump, this was a game where the Lions just didn't have it. They just didn't really look like themselves, and it was a kind of foreshadowing of some of the issues that they were going to have for the entirety of that season. The Packers jumped out to a 17-3 lead in the first half. Jared Goff got sacked, I believe, 4 times by 4 different people in this game. It was just ugly from an offensive standpoint, on top of the fact that the one thing that the Lions had routinely been able to count on is their rushing attack. And this is a game where Jahmyr Gibbs only had 19 yards rushing. David Montgomery only had 25. Like, they were struggling to move the ball against Green Bay in terms of getting it into scoring, but at the end of the day, they were also not doing terribly defensively. You look at what the Packers were able to do. They were only able to put up 188 net pass yards, 266 total yards, which were 20 more yards than the Lions did. But yet they were able to really capitalize in terms of getting into scoring position and putting points on the board.
But you get the point. It's just interesting because the Vikings also have not exactly been dominant in their matchups against the Packers, unless you want to count the game where we sat our starters. Again, the ability for the Vikings to just page over the Packers as though oh, that's easy. Whereas the Lions are look, dude, yeah, there's reason for optimism and all that stuff, and there's reason to put down the Packers and all the goodies in between. But not only is there a sense of nervousness, maybe, but there's also just a sense of they got our freaking number, and we gotta take this back. So it's just a respect thing. It's a respect thing to where they want to win the division. They believe they're the best team, and they know that in order to do that, they're going to have to be able to take out the Packers, and that's not going to be easy. It's very doable, obviously, but it's going to be difficult. And apparently the Vikings disagree. That's the easy part. As for the record, not surprisingly, pretty optimistic. The Side Lion report put them at 12-5, saying that they should capitalize not only on the easy schedule, but their health. Jeremy Reisman over at Pride of Detroit put them at also 12-5. Syndicate Sports Detroit over on YouTube said somewhere between 11-6 and 13-4. So 12-5. Passing Time Detroit Lions Talk, a podcast, put them at 11-13 wins. So 12-5 again. So there is a pretty unanimous feeling of about 12 wins on the season. So depending on how Bears fans feel, I mean, Vikings fans are clearly seeing double-digit wins. Packer fans are seeing double-digit wins. Lions fans are seeing double-digit wins. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how that all pans out. Anywho, we'll take our final break and see what the Bears are feeling about their schedule. Okay, let's talk Chicago Bears schedule here. The Bears landed 7 premium standalone windows. First time in franchise history, playing on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. They have, unlike the Lions, depending on who you ask, toughest strength of schedule in the NFL. They're on the 9 home game, 8 away game rotation. They have, similar to the Packers, not only a Thanksgiving, although it's actually on Thanksgiving, game at Detroit, but have the Green Bay Packers game versus the Green Bay Packers at Soldier Field. Their full primetime slate, by the way, Week 3, Monday night against the Eagles, Week 7, Thursday night versus the Patriots, Week 8, Monday night at Seahawks, Week 9, Sunday night versus Buccaneers, Week 12, Thanksgiving at Lions, Week 15, Saturday at Bills, Week 16, Christmas versus Packers. There's a lot of hype surrounding the amount of primetime games. Basically, this is confirmation for them that we are now arrived. So this is leading us right down the line of 4 for 4. 4 teams in the NFC North will be double-digit winning teams with Super Bowl championships at the end of this season. Again, there is talk of a relatively easy start to the season, but a difficult home finish. Weeks 2 through 4, or 1 through 4, they've got Panthers, Vikings, Eagles, Jets. Obviously, the Eagles are thought to be a pretty tough team, but still 3 for 4. They're hoping to go 3-1, or in some people's minds, 4-0 down that stretch. However, like has been the case for a lot of NFC North teams, a difficult stretch toward the end, the mid to end of the season. Specifically starting Week 15, they have at Buffalo versus Green Bay on Christmas, and then versus Detroit, and then at Minnesota Vikings. There's also a Week 12 Lions game as well, so those two are relatively close to each other, not exactly like the Packers last year. There is a pretty large expectation that Caleb Williams takes a massive jump, this being year 2 under Ben Johnson. I think similar to what you see with the Vikings, there's a lot of just assuming, right? This is just what happens. When you're in year 2 of a system, you just get better. Everybody knows that, duh. But how do the Chicago Bears feel specifically in regard to, let's say the Green Bay Packers? Now, I will say, similar to the Lions, which is why I'm so surprised by the Vikings, there's definitely a feeling of, we're better, we're going to prove it, all that stuff, right? Of course, the Bears, they won the division, they think they're going to win it again. The Lions are the odds-on favorites, they're a good football team, they think they're going to win it. The Packer fans, in large part, think they're going to win it, all that stuff. Only the Vikings that I've found have been so arrogant in not only believing that they're probably going to win the division, but because they just assume their quarterback is going to be good, and also they don't really even need a quarterback because they have this defensive coordinator, and suddenly that means something. And the lowly Packers are basically a blip in the road. Maybe the Bears are worth talking about, not the Packers. There's at least a sense of, like, this rivalry means something, and I can't wait to see them, whatever. It's a classic rivalry. This is a big game. You even had Adam Hogue over at Hogue and Jans at CHGO was apparently livid that the Packers game was, quote-unquote, wasted on Christmas because he felt that it might not get the full primetime spotlight that it deserved. Presumably, he's thinking everyone's going to be busy Christmasing and missing the game. David Kaplan, another guy, I think he's over at the CHGO, or at least he works with them. I don't really know. But he says that they're a really good team, talking about the Packers, but never finished higher than the extra seed since Rodgers left. So again, even with minor digs or this is why we're going to be better or whatever the case, very good football team. The Bears, Etc. podcast, Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer had the Bears and Packers splitting. And then the overall vibe on it. CHGO, varying degrees of where they felt, but generally in the 10 to 11 win range. David Kaplan pushed back against the 9.5 under, said that they're more in the 11-plus win range. Alyssa Barbieri has them 11-6, sweeping the Packers, splitting with the Lions and Vikings. Brendan Segru, 10-7. Mike Pendleton, 12-5. Vinny Parisi, 13-4. Preston, whatever that guy's name is, 11-6. So, I guess I shouldn't be as surprised. I'm a little bit surprised by the Vikings, but generally speaking, go figure, the Bears, the Vikings, the Lions, and the Packers, I'll say content creator community at large, each believes that their team is 10-plus wins on the season, playoffs, and competing to be the number one in the NFC North. Obviously, at least one of these fan bases is dead wrong. Possibly two, possibly three. I think in the near future, we'll probably dig in a little bit more on each of these teams and kind of maybe push back on it, especially the Vikings, and their feelings on their defensive coordinator and how much that is going to impact things, and the fact that they're not going to regress, that they're obviously just going to get better, and the quarterback situation. I mean, I'll even at least halfway grant them what they're talking about, but again, it's kind of the just assumption that it's just obviously going to happen. That's so wild to me. As for the Lions, obviously it's the same thing. There's positives and negatives. We can dig into that. And then the Chicago Bears, plenty of assumptions being made there that shouldn't be assumptions. But like the other teams, if things go the right way, and this is true of the Packers, it's true of everybody. If everything comes up heads, you got a real shot at being a good football team. But I think there's way too much assuming going on. There's certain things you can feel confident in, right? If you feel confident in Jared Goff, if you feel confident in Jordan Love, if you feel confident in guys that have been around a while, so at least generally the range. Of course, injuries can happen, and massive improvements or fall offs can happen, but there are a lot of things that you can more or less have a general idea of how you think it's going to go. There's also a lot of things that you shouldn't say that like Caleb is automatically going to make a massive jump, or that the quarterback that just got let go that we picked up to be a short-term fill-in is automatically going to be a good quarterback. These are the things we shouldn't just assume. But anywho, I got to go do Packernet After Dark, assuming we have enough calls. So I will talk to you all later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.